Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 116 based on novel. So let's start. Third level herbalist. As soon as Xiao Yang said this, Jin Yaro's pretty face couldn't help but be surprised. A third order herbalist, who would move even the strong fighting emperor, could Xiao Yang be a third order herbalist? With this in mind, Jin Yaro's heart could not help but gush out a sense of horror. Such a young third order herbalist, I'm afraid, is very rare in the whole continent. Mr. Xiao Yang, is he a third class herbalist? Although she was shocked at this, Jin Yaro couldn't help asking Xiao Yang. At the same time, his white palm slowly stretched out 2 fingers to Jin Yaro, and the light flashed between the 2 fingers. A prescription filled with various herbs appeared in Xiao Yang's hand. Seeing this scene, Jin Yaro couldn't help but gently pick her eyebrow, stretch out her jade hand and take the prescription Xiao Yang handed to her. His eyes slowly swept over the columns of medicinal materials listed on the prescription, and the eyes in Jin Yaomei's eyes gradually became dignified. Although she can't recognize what kind of pill formula this pill is, it must be a third-order pill from the perspective of the medicinal materials needed on it. This pill is naturally the pill of the third-order pill Hui Bodhisattva. In order to find those herbs conveniently, Xiao Yang wrote them on paper before he went out. Please help me to have a look. Can you collect all the medicinal materials above the Dan prescription here? Dai Mai frowned, but Jin Yaro shook her head and glanced over the red square in her hand again. Immediately, she looked at Xiao Yang and said, Mr. Xiao Yang, I think highly of my body. Although my 1000 medicine workshop has a large collection, I can only find 2 kinds of medicinal materials on your Dan prescription here at most. As for others, I don't have them here. After all, most of the medicinal materials above are extremely cherished. If you want to collect them, I'm afraid there is only a larger medicine workshop or a federation of pharmacists, only then can we gather together. Hearing about the alliance of herbalists, Xiao Yang couldn't help but move slightly. The alliance of herbalists is a force directly under Dantar. If you can enter it, it will also be a great help to Xiao Yang. Giggle, by the way, as Mr. Xiao Yang's third-order herbalist, if you take the initiative to join the Herbalist Alliance, those guys will certainly take the initiative to help Mr. Xiao Yang collect all the herbs. It seemed that she saw what Xiao Yang thought. Jin Yaro smiled and said. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang didn't make a sound on his face, but he smiled in his heart. The woman in front of him really regarded him as a third-order herbalist. He, I'm not interested in joining the Herbalist Alliance for the time being. I'd better leave this to the future. I just don't know. Can the leader of the Gold Workshop agree to my request? Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Jin Yaro could not help but frown. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yang in front of him could say all kinds of amazing words for the alliance of herbalists who broke their heads and wanted to enter. If other herbalists heard this, they might have to fight him. Jin Yaro smiled charmingly at Xiao Yang. Her jade hand stretched out and her mind moved. An invisible force condensed out of thin air. Under the control of Jin Yaro's mind, she picked 1,000 leaves on the 1,000 fan tree the size of an adult's palm and sent them to Xiao Yang. Looking at the 1,000 leaves in front of him, Xiao Yang couldn't help glowing slightly, arched his hand at Jin Yaro and said with a smile, Thank you, Master Jin Fang. At the same time, Xiao Yang carefully placed the 1,000 leaves in front of him, which were only the size of the palm, and immediately took out a jade box, put it away and received the ring. Giggle, Mr. Xiao Yang, you're welcome. As you said, we just hold what we need. You should have obtained this 1,000 leaf. Seeing this, Jin Yaro smiled. The smile was almost evil. If Xiao Yang's concentration was not ordinary, I'm afraid this smile alone would be enough to cause trouble for Xiao Yang. Cough. He coughed twice. Xiao Yang looked a little unnatural and took back his eyes. The latter slightly pursed his red lips and immediately spoke to Xiao Yenro again. I don't know what Mr. Xiao Yang needs, but the medicine on this prescription. And these. Xiao Yang was embarrassed. He took out another piece of paper with the medicinal materials needed for ice elixir and handed it to Jin Yaro. Jin Yaro glanced at it roughly, but she couldn't help frowning. Xiao Yang then handed her this list. Some of the herbs made her feel very embarrassed. I really don't know what pill you're refining. The medicinal materials you need are all things that can only be used by some high-level pills. He couldn't help but tut and exclaimed at Xiao Yang. The latter was also helpless when he heard his speech. Seeing this, Jin Yaro couldn't help rubbing his forehead with his jade hand. Xiao Yang took out 2 danfang one after another, which seemed to make the strong man at the level of fighting emperor feel a headache. Alas! Mr. Xiao Yang, you really gave me a big surprise. Until a long time later, Jin Yarrow said with a helpless smile at Xiao Yang. Seeing Jin Yarrow's appearance, Xiao Yang couldn't help sinking slightly. A heart in his chest also accelerated at this moment. Mr. Xiao Yang really has the medicinal materials he needs. However, please don't have too much hope, because when these 2 Dan prescriptions are added together, our 1000 medicine workshop can only take out 5 of them. As for the others, I can only forgive my heart for my weakness. He shook his head slightly. Jin Yarrow returned the 2 Danfang to Xiao Yang and said. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang's face could not help moving slightly. Originally, he thought he could only find 2 or 3 kinds of medicinal materials this time, but Jin Yarrow's answer exceeded Xiao Yang's expectation. 5 kinds of medicinal materials. In Xiao Yang's opinion, this trip is not empty. After all, the medicinal materials recorded on the 2 Dan prescriptions are all the ones that heaven and earth cherish very much. Even if they are put on the market, they are valuable and have no market. At the moment, Xiao Yang can find 5 kinds in the 1000 medicine workshop, which is a big surprise for him. Oh, 5, that's enough. Xiao Yang smiled, and the worried color on his face had disappeared in an instant. Instead, he smiled with satisfaction. Following Jin Yarrow, Xiao Yang walked slowly towards the deeper part of the 1000 medicine workshop. Because those 5 kinds of medicinal materials are particularly precious, they are also included in a separate compartment in the 1000 medicine workshop by Jin Yarrow. At the moment, what Xiao Yang and others want to go to is here. Walking in the 1000 medicine workshop, people will pass by Xiao Yang from time to time. When they see the famous 1000 medicine workshop owner in Yang City, they will be attracted by the latter's world-famous face. Until Xiao Yang left in sight, they would take back their eyes with nostalgia. At the same time, they also raised a hostility to the man who had just been with Jin Yarrow. Xiao Yang naturally felt the hostile eyes from those behind him. At present, he had to smile bitterly and shake his head, speeding up the pace of moving forward. However, inadvertently, he walked side by side with Jin Yarrow in front of him, making the killing intention more crazy in the eyes of those behind him. Feeling the colder and colder eyes behind him, the muscles on Xiao Yang's face couldn't help twitching. He glanced at the red-skirt woman beside him. Xiao Yang was stunned. No wonder this woman can settle down in this burning city. Her strength is on the one hand, but the art of seduction is even more terrible. You can make so many people crazy about her without even having to do it yourself. This kind of woman is the most dangerous. Seeing the look on Xiao Yang's face, Jin Yarrow smiled and didn't say much, but invisible, the swaying posture was even more fascinating. But in a moment, they had come to an uninhabited place in the 1000 medicine workshop. The originally spacious hall around is only the corridor in front of 2 people. In the deep part of the corridor, there is a dark wall, which makes it look like a very strange dead end. In this regard, Xiao Yang had already seen nothing strange, and immediately came to the black wall. Hehe, the medicine Mr. Xiao Yang needs is in here. Before arriving at the black wall, Jin Yarrow smiled casually. Immediately, the jade hand was lifted gently, and the palm of her hand was slowly pasted on the black wall in front of her. Kaka, kaka. Then, the dark wall began to vibrate slightly. Jin Yarrow withdrew half a step backward, and the black wall in front of him slowly opened in a burst of clicks. Behind the wall is a sealed stone chamber. There is a layer of thick stone walls around the stone chamber, which completely isolates the whole space from the outside world. The only exit to the outside world is the stone gate where Xiao Yang and his 2 stand at the moment. On the walls of the stone chamber, the glittering and translucent white beads emit a faint soft light, which reflects the whole stone chamber. Xiao Yang saw that in the center of the stone chamber, there stood a huge stone column wider than people. The stone column connected to the dome and supported the whole stone chamber. The stone pillar is dark and carved with some reliefs of Warcraft and some obscure words. On a small platform carved out of the stone pillar, there is a small unknown fragment the size of the palm. Although Xiao Yang is a little curious about this, he ignores it at a glance. Glancing around, Xiao Yang soon found a large number of medicinal materials and some special metal materials in the stone chamber, including a few strange things that Xiao Yang couldn't understand. Moreover, what surprised Xiao Yang most was that all the herbs in the stone chamber were alive. These medicinal materials are not packed in jade boxes like ordinary medicine workshops, but are completely planted here under special conditions. In this way, it can not only ensure the maximum retention of the medicinal properties of the medicinal materials, but also greatly improve the value of the medicinal materials when they are sold, so as to bring greater profits to the medicine workshop. I have to say that this practice of Chenyaro workshop is really amazing. The growth conditions of most precious medicinal materials are different. If you want to plant precious medicinal materials in this stone chamber, you should not only understand the medicinal materials, but also master their living environment. If you don't grasp them well, it is very likely to cause the loss of medicinal materials. At the moment, these herbs in Xiao Yang's eyes are full of vitality. It is obvious that they are planted very well. Being able to do this is enough to prove the difference of Chenyaro workshop. Seeing Xiao Yang's face showing a look of amazement, Jin Yarrow couldn't help laughing in her heart. In order to perfectly preserve the medicinal properties of these herbs, she spent a lot of money in building the stone chamber at the beginning, but the function of the stone chamber also made her very satisfied. Now I see Xiao Yang again, naturally, I can't help feeling a little happy in my heart. Giggle, Mr. Xiao Yang, the medicine you need is in here, please. Red lips pursed slightly. Jin Yarrow bowed to Xiao Yang, made an invitation gesture and smiled. Smelling the speech, Xiao Yang also nodded. His body moved, and he jumped into the stone chamber. Entering the stone chamber, Xiao Yang was not polite. Before walking directly to the medicinal materials, his sharp eyes immediately locked 5 of the medicinal materials he needed. As for the others, Xiao Yang was excited, but he didn't take another look. Although not much, please don't mind Mr. Xiao Yang. Just as Xiao Yang began to collect the 5 herbs into the ring, Jin Yarrow's slightly apologetic voice also came from behind. He, Master Jinfang doesn't have to care. I'm satisfied to find these. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang turned and smiled at Jin Yarrow. At the same time, he collected the last medicinal material into the ring and said. After receiving the 5 herbs into the ring, Xiao Yang felt a lot more secure in his heart, and his face became relaxed. With a sigh of relief, he wanted to turn around and walk out of the stone chamber. However, just when Xiao Yang came to the door, the bones in his body suddenly made a sound, and Xiao Yang's footsteps suddenly solidified. Boy, wait, there's something I think it's necessary to see. The old man's solemn voice, like a steel nail, instantly fixed Xiao Yang's body in place. At the same time, in his heart, there was a sudden feeling of surprise. It's unusual to be able to be used by Gu in such word. Xiao Yang's eyes slowly narrowed, and his heart whispered. Old bone, what did you find? In the stone room, Xiao Yang frowned slightly. The steps he had taken forward also stopped at this moment and asked himself to the bone gloom in his heart. Well, I did find something. Gu spoke faintly, but from that tone, it was not difficult to hear some solemn feelings. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed slowly, and a touch of essence flashed through the depths of his pupils. Since Gu could speak in person, I'm afraid such a thing is very important. Old bone, I don't know what you mean. Turning around, Xiao Yang's sharp eyes slowly swept through the stone chamber behind him, but he didn't notice any strange ornaments. Therefore, he had to ask Guyo again. On that stone pillar, do you see the fragment? I mean that thing. The voice of Guyu's plain words came again, and Xiao Yang also raised his eyes. Where he came into the eye, on the stone column, on a carved platform, at the moment, there was a piece of palm-size, whole-body porcelain as white as jade, glittering and translucent treasure-light, like a shell-like fragment, hanging on a thin rope. That's... Xiao Yang frowned slightly. Only then did he find that the fragment seemed really strange. On the fragments, twisted and broken runes appeared in Xiao Yang's eyes, and those glittering treasure lights spread from the runes. Is this an array disc? Seeing those runes, Xiao Yang immediately thought of the array plates he had seen before. On those array plates, some sharp and difficult words were engraved. At the moment, on the broken fragment in front of Xiao Yang, what was engraved was exactly that kind of rune. Although it was different, Xiao Yang recognized it at a glance. Well, to be exact, it's a fragment on a certain array disc. Bone quiet slowly. Xiao Yang nodded softly, stared at the array disc fragments with both eyes, walked slowly to the front, stretched out his hand, and wanted to take it in his hand. Mr. Xiao Yang. While Xiao Yang was about to take down the fragment, behind him, Jin Yarrow's slightly solemn voice came suddenly. The invisible deterrence filled in the voice made Xiao Yang instantly recall his mind. His eyes were frozen, and the dark pupils couldn't help shrinking suddenly. Immediately, Xiao Yang stepped back a little, staggered 2 steps, turned his eyes, and looked at Jin Yarrow with a dignified face. From Jin Yarrow's voice, Xiao Yang heard a trace of hostility. Feeling this, Xiao Yang suddenly felt his hair stand up. If the woman in front of him did it to him, it would be troublesome. At the same time, when Jin Yaro saw the dignified color on Xiao Yang's face, she was slightly stunned. Immediately, her cold face gradually improved, and the slightly fluctuating breath calmed down. I'm sorry, Mr. Xiao Yang. I was a little excited just now. He owed himself to Xiao Yang, and Jin Yaro said slowly. Cough. I can't stand this. Besides, this thing belongs to your 1000 medicine workshop. I'm good at automation. It's really wrong. He coughed twice. Xiao Yang quickly waved his hand with a look of fear, and said cautiously in a slightly apologetic tone. The woman in front of him just showed her intention to kill him. In the twinkling of an eye, she turned into an innocent appearance, which really made Xiao Yang feel like a cold cicada. Mr. Xiao Yang is kind. You helped me revive the 1000 fan tree. If Mr. Xiao Yang needs anything in it, you don't have to be polite. Just pick it. It's just the fragment behind you. At this point, Jin Yaro said a little, but when he reached his mouth, he couldn't spit it out. Hee, it doesn't hurt. I'm just curious for a moment, so I can't help but want to see it. If the owner of the gold workshop is inconvenient, I'll leave now. Xiao Yang's eyelids were slightly low. A flash of light flashed through the depths of his pupils. With a dry smile, he immediately raised his feet and wanted to go outside the stone chamber. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Jin Yaro's pretty face was not calm. Now, she takes Xiao Yang as a third-order herbalist. Even if she looks at the whole western region, she can't find a few people. If she can have a good relationship with him, it will be of endless benefit to her and the 1000 medicine workshop in the future. If at this time, because of an unknown array fragment, breaking the relationship between her and Xiao Yang is not worth the loss, Mr. Xiao Yang, please stay. Just as Xiao Yang was biting his teeth, a trace of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. When he wanted to go out of the stone chamber, Jin Yaro behind him was also biting his silver teeth. He immediately made a decision in his heart. While turning around, he said to Xiao Yanning, "Who?" He breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Xiao Yang's breathtaking face quickly returned to calm. Soon, he turned back slowly, smiled at Jin Yaro and asked deliberately, "What else can I do for you?" Jin Yaomei's eyes narrowed, and a light flashed through her bright eyes. Then she reacted. Looking at this, she was afraid to be put by Xiao Yang in front of her, but now that things are so far, I'm afraid I can only do this loss business. With a helpless wry smile in her heart, Jin Yaro raised her beautiful eyes, pursed her red lips slightly, showed a touching gentle smile, looked at Xiao Yang and said slowly, "If Mr. Xiao Yang wants to see this fragment, I will give it to Mr. Xiao Yang. In fact, the reason why I stopped Mr. Xiao Yang just now is because there is a boundary set by my concubine on this stone pillar." With that, Jin Yaro's soft and delicate body turned slowly, the jade hand lifted up and quickly sacrificed several seal knots. Sure enough, a thin film air barrier really emerged on the dark stone pillar. With the disappearance of the seal knots on Jin Yaro's jade hand, the barrier slowly dissipated. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang's eyes could not help but coagulate slightly. It seems that this fragment is really not an ordinary decoration. Otherwise, it would not be sealed so carefully by a strong man fighting the emperor. The barrier, but even Xiao Yang's soul power has not been found. This alone is enough to prove the secret degree of the barrier. If Xiao Yang accidentally touched it just now, the result is unimaginable. In his heart, Xiao Yang couldn't help showing a thrilling look on his face. Immediately, he stepped forward and came to the huge stone pillar. This time, without the protection of the gas barrier, the fragment was completely exposed to the air. Jin Yaro on one side looked at this array disc fragment in her eyes and scanned Xiao Yang's eyes. Seeing that the latter was also a look of doubt, she couldn't help feeling suspicious about it. Since Xiao Yang doesn't know the origin of this array of fragments, why on earth does he want to have a look? While Jin Yaro was thinking suspiciously, Xiao Yang stretched out his hands and carefully took the fragment off the sling and put it in the palm of his hand. Looking at the array disc fragments in his palm, Xiao Yang's eyes were more curious. He really couldn't see the difference between such a small array disc fragment the size of his palm. "Old bone, is there anything special about this thing?" Dark eyes stared at the array disc fragments in the palm. Xiao Yang asked Jiuyu again with suspicion. "I don't know." However, Jiuyu's answer made Xiao Yang's expression instantly dull, and he felt a burst of consternation in his heart. This array disc fragment, which was regarded as a treasure by Guyo a moment ago, was said to be like an ordinary stone and worthless. "Mr. Xiao Yang, what's the matter?" At this time, seeing the change of Jin Yaro on Xiao Yang's face, Daimai frowned and asked Xiao Yenro. Hearing the voice from Jin Yao's mouth, Xiao Yan was stunned. Soon, he hurried back to his mind, grinned at the latter and said in an embarrassed way, Nothing. I'm just looking around. Now that I've finished reading it, I'll return it to its owner. With an embarrassed smile, Xiao Yan threw his mouth in his heart and put the disc fragments back in place with one hand. He wanted to turn and leave under the strange gaze of Jin Yao. Hey, if this array disc fragment is only a single decoration, it is really worthless. However, if you can find other parts of the array disc and piece them together, even the strong will be moved by it. When Xiao Yang just put the disc fragments back in place, Guyo was full of banter laughter, which slowly came out from the bottom of Xiao Yang's heart. Whoosh dash. As the voice in Jiu Yuku fell, I saw Xiao Yang's feet move, and Tianjua's step was displayed in an instant. In the twinkling of an eye, the array of disc fragments returned to Xiao Yang's hands again. Seeing this scene, Jin Yao's pretty face suddenly became stunned. She also felt a burst of strangeness about Xiao Yang's sudden change. Mr. Xiao Yang, are you? Jin Yao couldn't help blinking a pair of exquisite beautiful eyes. Then she looked at Xiao Yang strangely and showed a suspicious way on her pretty face. Cough, I didn't see it clearly just now, so I can't help but want to see it again. The pale reason made Xiao Yang's old face become hot while talking, while Jin Yao couldn't help laughing. Immediately, she turned her eyes and stared at Xiao Yang and asked, Mr. Xiao Yang, don't you know the origin of this array of fragments? Xiao Yang was stunned. Sure enough, she could be kept so carefully by this woman. How could she not see the particularity of this fragment? Hehe, the leader of the gold workshop thinks highly of me. I'm a herbalist, but I've never been in contact with the array, let alone the array plate. How can I recognize this thing? He shook his head with a bitter smile. Xiao Yang never lied about this. He really didn't recognize the array of fragments. The reason why he paid attention to this thing was just because of the relationship between bone and you. Oh, really, that's true. Jin Yao's beautiful eyes flashed slightly and said softly, the leader of the gold workshop regards this fragment as so important. I think he knows something about it. He grabbed a smile from the corner of his mouth, put one hand in front of Jin Yao, spread his 5 fingers, and the array disc fragments emitting soft white light stood impressively. Immediately, Xiao Yang smiled and asked Jin Yao. Giggle, since Mr. Xiao Yang asked, my concubine can only tell the truth. To be honest, although I can see the extraordinary of this fragment, it makes my concubine a little embarrassed if I want to find out. Since I got this fragment, I have studied it for more than 10 years and read countless ancient books about array disc, but the final result is still vague. Shaking her head, Jin Yao Dai frowned slightly, and a helpless color appeared on her beautiful cheek. From this fragment, she can feel an extremely obscure and powerful breath. Even with her cultivation, the terror of the breath is completely unmatched. Every exploration, the breath on the fragment will always make her fear and panic. And this is just a corner of the array. It is hard to imagine how terrible the array exists when it is complete. Unfortunately, although Jin Yao read countless ancient books, she couldn't find a result after all. However, she had to store the fragment here until today. Although I don't know the origin of this array of fragments, I can be sure that its noumenon must be extraordinary. If you were an ordinary thing, I'm afraid you wouldn't be liked by the old man. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang couldn't help muttering in his heart. At the same time, he couldn't help feeling shocked at Jin Yao's insight. Old bone, is there anything special about this thing? Dark eyes stared at the array disc fragments in the palm. Xiao Yang asked Jiu Yu again with suspicion. I don't know. However, Jiu Yu's answer made Xiao Yang's expression instantly dull, and he felt a burst of consternation in his heart. This array disc fragment, which was regarded as a treasure by Guyo a moment ago, was said to be like an ordinary stone and worthless. Mr. Xiao Yang, what's the matter? At this time, seeing the change of Jin Yao on Xiao Yang's face, Daimai frowned and asked Xiao Yenro. Hearing the voice from Jin Yao's mouth, Xiao Yang was stunned. Soon, he hurried back to his mind, grinned at the latter and said in an embarrassed way, Nothing. I'm just looking around. Now that I've finished reading it, I'll return it to its owner. With an embarrassed smile, Xiao Yang threw his mouth in his heart and put the disc fragments back in place with one hand. He wanted to turn and leave under the strange gaze of Jin Yao. Hey, if this array disc fragment is only a single decoration, it is really worthless. However, if you can find other parts of the array disc and piece them together, even the strong will be moved by it. When Xiao Yang just put the disc fragments back in place, Guyo was full of banter laughter, which slowly came out from the bottom of Xiao Yang's heart. Whoosh dash. As the voice in Jiu Yuku fell, I saw Xiao Yang's feet move, and Tianjua's step was displayed in an instant. In the twinkling of an eye, the array of disc fragments returned to Xiao Yang's hands again. Seeing this scene, Jin Yao's pretty face suddenly became stunned. She also felt a burst of strangeness about Xiao Yang's sudden change. Mr. Xiao Yang, are you? Jin Yao couldn't help blinking a pair of exquisite beautiful eyes. Then she looked at Xiao Yang strangely and showed a suspicious way on her pretty face. Cough, I didn't see it clearly just now, so I can't help but want to see it again. The pale reason made Xiao Yang's old face become hot while talking, while Jin Yao couldn't help laughing. Immediately, she turned her eyes and stared at Xiao Yang and asked, Mr. Xiao Yang, don't you know the origin of this array of fragments? Xiao Yang was stunned. Sure enough, she could be kept so carefully by this woman. How could she not see the particularity of this fragment? Hehe, the leader of the gold workshop thinks highly of me. I'm a herbalist, but I've never been in contact with the array, let alone the array plate. How can I recognize this thing? He shook his head with a bitter smile. Xiao Yang never lied about this. He really didn't recognize the array of fragments. The reason why he paid attention to this thing was just because of the relationship between bone and you. Oh, really, that's true. Jin Yao's beautiful eyes flashed slightly and said softly, the leader of the gold workshop regards this fragment as so important. I think he knows something about it. He grabbed a smile from the corner of his mouth, put one hand in front of Jin Yao, spread his 5 fingers, and the array disc fragments emitting soft white light stood impressively. Immediately, Xiao Yang smiled and asked Jin Yao. Giggle, since Mr. Xiao Yang asked, my concubine can only tell the truth. To be honest, although I can see the extraordinary of this fragment, it makes my concubine a little embarrassed if I want to find out. Since I got this fragment, I have studied it for more than 10 years and read countless ancient books about array disc, but the final result is still vague. Shaking her head, Jin Yao Dai frowned slightly, and a helpless color appeared on her beautiful cheek. From this fragment, she can feel an extremely obscure and powerful breath. Even with her cultivation, the terror of the breath is completely unmatched. Every exploration, the breath on the fragment will always make her fear and panic. And this is just a corner of the array. It is hard to imagine how terrible the array exists when it is complete. Unfortunately, although Jin Yao read countless ancient books, she couldn't find a result after all. However, she had to store the fragment here until today. Although I don't know the origin of this array of fragments, I can be sure that its noumenon must be extraordinary. If you were an ordinary thing, I'm afraid you wouldn't be liked by the old man. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang couldn't help muttering in his heart. At the same time, he couldn't help feeling shocked at Jin Yao's insight. Under the exploration of Xiao Yang's soul power, even if he did his best, he could only see that there was a special layer of power to protect the array on the surface of the array, but Xiao Yang could not explore the so-called extremely obscure horror. Tut tut, this little girl is not simple. At this time, the voice of Jiu Yu's words full of admiration came out slowly. Hearing Jiu Yu's words, Xiao Yang's heart set off a storm for this. Unexpectedly, even Jiu Yu, who has always had a high vision, can say such praise to Jin Yao. This alone is enough to prove that Jin Yao is unusual. Mr. Xiao Yang, don't you really know this fragment? The long and narrow eyes flickered like a butterfly. Jin Yao stared at Xiao Yang with a smile on her face, which means she asked again inexplicably. Ha ha. He smiled non-committally. Xiao Yang didn't know how to answer. Alas. I thought I could find a master to know the fragment, but since Mr. Xiao Yang doesn't recognize it, it seems that the fragment can only remain silent here. Jin Yaomei's eyes flickered slightly, and a look of regret appeared on her pretty face. The jade hand stretched out and wanted to take back the fragments in Xiao Yang's hand. Well, actually, my senior master seems to have mentioned this thing to me, but I'm not a matrix mage, so I don't care. I think if I can take it back to see my senior master, I think he should recognize it. In a hurry, Xiao Yang couldn't care so much. His eyes twinkled and said a lot of words that he didn't even know how to make up. He was stunned by Jin Yao's pretty face. He didn't know how true Xiao Yang's words were. At the same time, Jiu Yu in Xiao Yang's body couldn't help but curl her mouth. She made a contemptuous gesture to Xiao Yang in her heart, laughing and scolding. Smelly boy, when did I become your master? Just an apprentice like you, just give it to me. I don't want it yet. Although he said this in his heart, Guyo didn't notice. While he said this, there was a sense of joy in his heart. Well, In that case, I'll do it to the end. Anyway, it's useless for me to leave this fragment here. Otherwise, I'll give it to Mr. Xiao Yang so that I can give it to your master to study. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Jin Yarrow felt a burst of sadness and laughter in her heart. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yang could make up such irrelevant words in order to get this fragment. Her heart burst into laughter, but Jin Yarrow finally took back her outstretched jade hand. Since she removed the gas barrier, she had decided to give this fragment to Xiao Yang. Although she didn't know whether she was right or wrong, she did it after all. Xiao Yang held the array disc fragments in his hand, but he didn't expect that Jin Yarrow would be so straightforward. Nodding slightly, Xiao Yang clasped his fists and arched his hands heavily at Jin Yarrow, saying solemnly, "Thank you." Giggle, why is Xiao Yang's brother so polite? If you really want to thank him, please don't forget my sister if Mr. Xiao Yang is successful in the future. Jin Yarrow blinked her long and narrow beautiful eyes at Xiao Yang, and a touching and beautiful smile appeared on her cheek. Her voice changed back to the waxy and unbearable soft voice. Brother. Sister. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang picked up his eyebrows. He couldn't help feeling a burst of amazement at the sudden emergence of Jin Yarrow's new vocabulary, and the look on his face became wonderful. Giggle, okay, now that I have everything, my sister won't joke with you. Let's go. My sister is really reluctant to give you other things. The 6 things you took away have cost my 1,000 medicine workshop a lot of profit. Jin Yao's red lips were slightly pursed, and she looked at Xiao Yang with a smile. Her tone was light and joked. She seems to have a lot of enthusiasm for this newly recognized brother. As for the latter remark, Xiao Yang was full of embarrassment, but he was really helpless about the word brother. Glancing at his mouth, Xiao Yang just turned around, but a pair of pupils suddenly contracted. Looking down, Jin Yarrow stepped forward and surrounded Xiao Yang's right arm with a white jade arm like a lotus root. At the same time, a unique fragrance of women and an extremely soft and gentle feeling were quickly introduced into Xiao Yang's mind. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang's face suddenly coagulated, but before he could speak, Jin Yarrow took him thinking of going outside the stone chamber. After they left the stone chamber, the heavy door of the stone chamber was closed, and no one could enter the space behind the stone door. However, just after Xiao Yang and his 2 people had just left the stone chamber, the soul power spread out by Xiao Yang suddenly came a wave of soul. The source of this soul fluctuation is Murong Chanxian, who Xiao Yang always pays careful attention to. When this soul wave came, Xiao Yang's body, which was originally dragged by Jin Yarrow, was suddenly fixed in place. Jin Yarrow's pretty face was slightly stunned. At the same time, Xiao Yang's face gradually became gloomy. What's the matter? Aware of the change in the look on Xiao Yang's face, Jin Yarrow could not help but frown at Dai Mai, slowly loosened the jade hand around Xiao Yang's arm, and looked at Xiao Yang with a little doubt on her pretty face. She could clearly perceive that there was a rage rising rapidly in Xiao Yang's body at the moment, so that his breath fluctuated with it. It seemed that something had happened that made him angry. I'm afraid it won't be small to let Xiao Yang, who has always been calm and stable, show such an appearance. Jin Yarrow's bright eyes turned and suddenly thought of Murong Chanxian. Since they went to the 2nd floor, Murong Chanxian went elsewhere without following them. At the moment, Xiao Yang's sudden anger may also be related to her. That girl, something's wrong again. Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed, and a sharp light came out of his eyes. He moved and wanted to think about the position of Murong Chanxian at the moment. Wait, I'll go too. There are many people who can recognize you in this burning city. If you rush over so rashly, I'm afraid it won't be a good thing. Just as Xiao Yang was about to leave, Jin Yarrow also spoke solemnly. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang thought about it, nodded heavily, hugged Jin Yarrow and thanked him. Thank you. Giggle, Xiao Yang's brother doesn't have to be polite. It's his duty to be a sister. Giggle. Giggle. Hearing Jin Yarrow's words, Xiao Yang's angry face suddenly became a little embarrassed. He threw his mouth in his heart. Immediately, he set off with Jin Yarrow and walked quickly towards Murong Chanxian's place at the moment. This bracelet was first seen by Miss Ben. Why should you take it away? Oh, why? Just because Miss Ben's price is higher than you. But this is what I bought first. In front of me, I don't know who will buy first and then buy. The one with the highest price will get it. If you have the ability, you will take out more spirit coins. Since you don't have money to buy it, leave the 1,000 medicine workshop quickly. It's not a smelly girl like you who can come in here. You're in the way of Miss Ben. In a hall surrounded by various ornaments, a crowd was forming a circle, looking at the 2 girls in the field. At the same time, a burst of whispers spread quietly. Who says I can't afford it? It's just Miss Ben's money. It's always kept by subordinates. Murong Qianqian's eyes widened, and a pair of beautiful eyes stared at the same beautiful girl of the same age, with a touch of deep anger in his eyes. It was originally a bracelet that she liked first. When she was about to buy it with spirit coins, unexpectedly, the girl came from behind, grabbed it from her hand and paid the price. The most important thing is that the girl's bid is so high that even the whole belongings of Murong Qianqian can't be overwhelmed, which makes her feel unwilling at the same time. I can't help feeling warm anger. But what makes Murong Qianqian intolerable is that after robbing something, the girl insulted Murong Qianqian in a domineering tone, which makes Murong Qianqian, who has never paid attention to anyone, how can he bear it, even if he quarreled with the latter? With this in mind, Murong Qianqian complains more about Xiao Yang. If Xiao Yang is not around, the latter's economic strength will not be a problem if they want to take the bracelet. In addition to being angry, as soon as the girl opened her mouth, she said Xiao Yang was her servant. When she said this, she looked vicious, which made the exquisite girl in front of her take 2 steps back. Smelly girl, you said your money was in your servant's hand. Where is he? After taking 2 steps back, the girl's pretty face also showed a reluctant look. Her fierce and domineering beautiful eyes swept everyone present. Anyone who looked at it could not help but shrink back. Although the girl's strength is not very good at present, her identity is enough to scare most people present. Glancing around, the girl saw that no one came forward for Murong Qianqian. Even if she was fooled, she showed a proud sneer. Even if she looked at Murong Qianqian again, she said coldly, "Smelly girl, you don't have the money to buy this bracelet at all. You still want to excuse yourself. Now you're seen through by my young lady. You're still shy and standing here. Don't go away." The girl strode close to Murong Qianqian. After some cold words and insults to the latter, she retreated again. At the same time, she didn't forget to wave the bracelet already worn on her wrist at Murong Qianqian proudly. Her rosy lips showed a sneer with provocative meaning. Soon, she wanted to turn around and leave. Damn it. Seeing the girl like this, Murong Qianqian suddenly became angry. With a twist of her body, she rushed up to the girl and wanted to take back the bracelet again. Where's the little girl from? She doesn't even have a tutor. She wants to rob things she can't buy. She really doesn't teach or train. Today, let me teach you a lesson on behalf of your elders. However, just as Murong Qianqian's delicate body was just twisting forward, a hoarse voice containing terror and authority suddenly came from the compartment. At the same time, an invisible threat of terror came quickly, and with boundless powerful momentum, he pressed Murong Qianqian in the field. Feeling the terrible pressure of the soul around him, the look on Murong Qianqian's pretty face also quickly turned pale. From the pressure of the soul alone, we can see that the strength of this person is extraordinary. Xiao Yang. At the time of the fall of the soul, Murong Qianqian couldn't help but close his eyes and showed a look of fear on his pale face. At this moment, in his heart, the first thing he thought of was not her relatives, but the black-robed man who annoyed her but had complex emotions. In the final analysis, Murong Qianqian is just a girl. Although he has the cultivation of a half-emperor, don't forget that even the strong half-emperor is just the most common in the western regions where there are hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Under the oppression of this spirit, Murong Qianqian will inevitably expose his daughter's emotions in his heart. The terror of the soul was like a horse's hoof, and then it came over Murong Qianqian's head. The terror momentum shook the void space. Immediately, it pressed down on Murong Qianqian's head with a vast momentum. However, just when everyone thought that the terrible soul pressure was about to fall on Murong Qianqian with a beautiful face at the moment, there was an extremely overbearing momentum outside the hall. In a twinkling of an eye, it destroyed the power of withering and decaying, and forcibly scattered the spirit pressure. At the next moment, when the people came back to their senses, they only heard a domineering voice full of anger coming from outside the hall. "Old boy, if you want to teach her a lesson, you deserve it. This video will end here.